Welcome, 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 everyone, to another edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, Pam. And just to let you know, or as a reminder, this channel is all about voter education, advocacy, and social justice with a mixture of culture. If anyone is in online right now, I'd like for you to put a one in the chat to make sure that the chat is working, please, if you would. Just want to make sure, that the chat is working. So if you could put a one or say hi or something to indicate that the chat is working, I'd greatly appreciate it on YouTube there. Okay, no one's cooperating. If you come in, also make sure that as you come in to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That's one way that you can greatly support the channel. So please let me know if you can hit the, put a one or something into the chat to let me know that you're there. Okay, let me double check something here. Okay. Let me double check something here. Okay. Let me double check something here. Okay. All right. I see that I was able to do it, so it does work. All right. Well, everyone, I have a very special guest this evening. I'm so excited to introduce you to him. And without further ado, I'm going to bring Professor Joyner up, and then I'm going to, there he is. Hey there, Professor Joyner.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing well. Okay, everyone. Like I said, I'm very honored to have Professor Irving Joyner with us this evening. He is the Charles Hamilton Houston Endowed Chair, Professor of Law at the North Carolina Central University. This year marks his 40th year anniversary with the School of Law there. From 1984 to 1992, Joyner has served as the Associate Dean. He's written 3 editions of his book, Criminal Procedure in North Carolina. He has written numerous articles and manuscripts for continuing legal education programs. He speaks and lectures regularly at legal education, civil rights, political empowerment, and educational advancement programs. Professor Joyner provides pro bono legal counsel to several political, religious, and community organizations, and to needy individuals in civil rights and criminal appeals cases. He served on numerous state commissions and agencies, including a 5-year term as the vice chair of the 1898 Wilmington Race Riot Commission. Professor Joyner, for the past 10 years, has co-hosted the highly acclaimed Legal Eagle Review radio show on WNCU 90.7 FM on Saturday mornings, as if he doesn't have enough to do already, right? But I am so thrilled that you agreed to come on with me this evening. I'm sure you have plenty of things that you could be doing on a Sunday evening, but I'm so thankful that you chose to spend some time with me and my audience. We're going to be talking about January 6th, the January 6th insurrection, everyone, as you know from the advertisements and what have you. And I'm just going to dive right in, Professor Joyner. I'm going to tell you, when I saw the insurrection happening, the month prior in December, I had eye surgery. So I thought, maybe I'm not seeing what I'm seeing. Maybe my eyes deceive me, because I was just shocked. I mean, absolutely shocked. And so I'm curious, what were your first thoughts when you physically saw the insurrection happening on January 6th?
Okay, well, thank you for the question. And at the outset, let me just say that I'm honored to be on your program. I was honored to get the invitation from you to share with this evening with you, and there is nothing that I would rather do more than be
Oh,
here with you on this evening. But
thank you.
focusing on your question, I too was shocked at what was occurring in Washington. I was not surprised that it was occurring, but I was shocked that in the middle of this century, in 2022, we would see people actually physically attacking a symbol of our democracy with the intent on preventing a regular, mundane, ordinary function from occurring, dealing with the election of a new president in this country and the transfer of power. It has never happened
Mhm.
in the United States, nor do I think that anyone even imagined that anything like this would occur, as you indicated how shocked you were.
Mhm.
But I think as we move through really the last 10 years, you could see that brewing in this country was a high level of antagonism that the right wing, ultra right wing groups were organizing and uh, articulating anti-government concerns and issues, and most of those centered around the advanced participation of African Americans and people of color into this government. So I'll get off my soapbox right there since I answered that question.
Well, you said you weren't surprised. I'm gonna be honest. I only recognize. I always thought that these, they're bad forces all the time, right? But I didn't become more aware of them until we had Trump as our president. I felt like his rhetoric, his demeanor, whatever, it just seemed like it unleashed everything. That's the way I looked at it. And so maybe, I mean, obviously they had to have been around at doing something all along. I don't know, I guess.
Well, if you go back to his campaign
Hmm.
for election in 2016, and you look at what was happening at the many rallies and demonstrations that were organized in support of his candidacy, and the violence that occurred during those events. Never before in history have we had campaign rallies where people were beaten up, thrown out, where there were a need to have law enforcement who were a part of this campaign to attack those people who were opposed to Donald Trump. So it started out right at the beginning, and
Hmm.
people thought it was a novelty, that it was something that would kind of go away, but it continued. So from the very beginning of the Trump campaign, you saw this tendency toward violence by his supporters, and those supporters who were most vocal were the ultra right wing forces in this country that some people laughingly thought of as being survivalists, and people who were interested in hiding out in the woods and running around shooting trees and
Hmm.
targets that they set up. But these people were in training and were becoming more vocal every day and visible every day and sending messages out to each other that our time has come. And I think that that started, and you recognize
Mm.
that that it created a kind of oomph on their part that they could now come out and visibly project their support for Donald Trump and the kinds of things that he was trying to promote.
You know what? I'm going to go away from my question that I planned to ask you to go back to something you said. Remember that dreadful day? I can't even remember what month it was. I think I deliberately want to forget when the Emmanuel Nine were massacred by Dylan Roof. And
Yeah,
that young man said that he said it was
right.
supposed to be a race war. And so I remember thinking, what the heck is he talking about? What race war? Whatever. And so that's when I kind of paid attention. Well, I was trying to pay, whatever, of there was this underground internet swelling of the people discussing this race war. And even within this whole insurrection thing, you heard rumblings of that as well. You know, that talk of it, because there's so many splinter groups. There's just so many groups that came surrounding the insurrection. And we'll touch on this whole thing about Christian nationalists, because I always was calling this religious faction evangelicals, and that's not entirely fair because that lumps a whole group of people into something that they may or may not be involved with. But the Christian nationalists, from what I'm reading, that's the big umbrella. All of the other groups are connected somehow, some way. It's just what do you think, Professor Joyner?
Well, religion has always played a huge role in the subjugation of African Americans and people of color. If you
Mhm,
go back to the enslavement period,
mhm,
that whole period was undergirded by this notion that enslaving people was endorsed in the Bible by God, and that what they were doing was merely carrying out God's will. And this was a strong part of the Christian theology that was being advanced, particularly in the South, in the Midwest, as people sought to find some explanation that would bind them into this effort to ensure that African Americans were always deemed to be second or third class citizens, and that other people of color were inferior to whites. And this notion that white supremacy flowed from biblical teachings and was ordained again by God. And that notion has continued with us from that period right on up to the present time, because the same groups of people that were promoting this Christian nationalism back during the enslavement period are the exact same ones that continue to spout that nonsense today. And the focus of all of this, as they talk about all the time, Donald Trump talked about it during his campaign, was that we need to put things back in order as they used to be.
mhm,
We need to go back to the old days. And when you look at what the old days was, those old days were subjugation, oppression, uh, demonization of African Americans and other people of color, indigenous populations. So
mhm,
there's a consistency. But what occurred, beginning with the civil rights movement, was that a lot of this rhetoric went underground because it was deemed to be unacceptable to
mhm,
people. And so, because it was unacceptable within society in this new day arising, that it went underground, but it was still there. And Donald Trump became the impetus for the head of this campaign to rear up again. And it was vocally presented in Charlottesville with
Yes.
the
Yes.
march,
Yes.
you will not replace us,
Jesus, that's
uh,
right.
directed toward African Americans and Jews and other
Mhm.
people of color. So it was a kind of a undercurrent that
Mhm.
was there, but uh, Donald Trump gave voice to it, and it emboldened those individuals in that community with that belief, and they started coming out. And January 6th was the height of that, and it hasn't abated yet. It's still going on.
It sure hasn't. And speaking of that, getting into my next question was that I distinctly saw, and you see in the uh, playbacks of the video, you had Representative Mo Brooks, from a Republican from Alabama. You had West Virginia Representative Derek Evans, though he actually stormed the Capitol and he had to resign and he got in trouble. I don't know what he was charged with, though I don't remember. You had several people: Virginia Senator Amanda Chase, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley,
Yep.
Tennessee State Rep Terry Lynn Weaver, and there were many more. And here's the thing: why can't they be charged with treason or something? I mean, you're the lawyer, so tell me, why aren't they? Why aren't these people that swore to the Constitution, to protect the Constitution, and to serve in our best interests as American citizens? Why aren't they being held to their oath
Well,
legally?
yeah, and that is a question that's been raised by many people. First of all, it is difficult to criminally prosecute and prove that someone has committed treason, and it's made difficult by the procedures and the evidence and the requirements dealing with that in this country, particularly at the federal level. And then you have this thing called the First Amendment,
Mm,
which allows people freedom of speech, that they can articulate any views that they want to, as long as they are not illegal. And of course, uh, voicing support for white supremacy has not been deemed to be illegal in this country. So the criminal laws focuses on action and what the person does, and being able to draw a connection between what the people are saying and then what the people are doing. And while it's clear to many people that there is a connection, there is still the necessity in court to have hardcore evidence of that. And it takes time, particularly, and if you think about it, you had a president who swore all of his people to secrecy. If you recall the several impeachment efforts
yeah.
that fell short, mainly because people could not talk, because they had this notion of executive privilege. And
Hmm.
that because of this executive privilege and the immunity that the president enjoys, that they could not come out and talk about what was going on, nor could they provide documents about what was going on. And it was in that silence, in that effort to keep private those things that occurred behind the scenes that prosecutors were unable to get to build a case that would support this notion of treason, as you would want it to be. In addition to that, the Justice Department, which is in charge of this prosecution, was under the control of Donald Trump and his
Yeah.
minions. And those people were not interested in
Mhm.
pursuing any criminal charges directed against any of the people that was a part of the Trump administration. And then when you look at the people that Donald Trump put in office, they were all supporters of this right wing anti government effort that was going on, and he looked for those type people to put into his administration such that they control the very organs of government. And if they did not do what Trump wanted them to do, he fired them and put somebody else in until he found in place those people who would be supportive of anything that he did. Even had people who were elected to serve as congressional representatives, as U.S. senators. You listed some of them. We had them right here in North Carolina.
Yeah,
Who was on the stage in his wheelchair, talking
right.
about let's fight with all of your might. Rudy Giuliani, so you had all of that, but you had a government that was paralyzed by the placement of Trump's adherents or Trump supporters in the positions of power where you would expect this evidence gathering to occur and any prosecutions of wrongdoing to emanate from. And so that was the big issue that we're
Mhm.
dealing with. And it is just now that some of those documents and some of that evidence is becoming public because now you have new people in place who are dedicated to the notion of uncovering the truth.
Well, Professor Joyner, with all due respect, I still don't understand when these guys said, they point blank said what they were going to do and what they, Trump said we've got to fight like hell and all this kind of stuff. I mean, what do you have to do? Write it out in crayons and stuff and say, to give it to somebody? I mean, what more do we need? And speaking of what more do we need, where is Merrick Garland? Where is our Attorney General in all of this? I
Yeah.
mean, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's kind of examine it now. You know, again, we go to this notion of First Amendment and people having the right to articulate their views. Fight for this and fight for that has been a part of the political rhetoric since time immemorial, during the Civil Rights Day. I remember that we were all on the bandstand talking about let's fight for our rights, let's push the revolution, let's promote the cultural revolution that's going on around us. And you had the Panthers, you had SNCC, you had all kinds of groups
Mhm,
articulating those views, and of course you had J. Edgar Hoover that was seeking to incarcerate as many of those as they could. But
mhm,
you know, so that language has been present for a long time. But in court, it's necessary that you do find that crayon on the wall that draws the connection between what the person says and what the person does in fact. And that is an effort that I think is underway. Let's think about this now. Let's think about this. I'm a lawyer, and I know that if I'm representing a client who has been charged with an offense, it's going
mhm.
to probably be anywhere from a year to 2 years and maybe even 3 years before I go to court on that case. If
Oh,
it's
it
going to
takes so long.
be, it does. I mean, it does. That's on a regular criminal case. Merrick Garland has been in office for 1 year.
Oh.
Uh, I mean, a short period of
Mhm,
time. We're just entering 2022. And when you look at all of the cover-ups that has occurred over the years, and now the effort to uncover all of that cover-up and to get behind the scenes, to get the people who were actively involved in that to come forward and provide the evidence that's needed, it takes time. And you don't want to rush it so that you blow it. So you want to have a thorough investigation and
mhm.
one that will bring all of the pieces together. Now, fortunately for us, we have a January 6th congressional committee that is
Mhm.
engaged in bringing a lot of that information out. And
Mhm.
that has included a lot of cases in court dealing with executive privilege and immunity, and whether the people who were involved has to turn over the records. And remember that Donald Trump took some of those records with him down to Florida and hid them,
When
or
he
kept
didn't flush down the toilet.
so that he did flush down the toilet. And now somebody has to go down to the toilet and bring up some of that material that was flushed. So it takes time to build a case. Unfortunately, the time is short, and we are hoping.
That's my problem. The time is short. We've got midterm elections, and that's the whole point of this show, is to educate people to think. Because one of the problems with this whole insurrection thing, the backstory, you're hearing Christian, you're hearing the Bible, you're hearing all of those buzzwords that for some people who don't choose to read or are just rather simplistic about things, they'll think, well, this is the Christian thing to do. I'm going to go with the GOP or whatever. They are the moral ban waving people, and we need to go with that. And yet you're voting against yourself and everything else. I mean, it's just mind blowing, really.
And Pam, that's why we need you
Oh,
to be on the case to expose what is going on, to help people, particularly African Americans and other people of color, as to what is really happening to us and what the impact is. What's the focus of all of this, and how it is that we can respond to what is going on. Because one of the things that we need to make sure of during this midterm is that the control of Congress and the
yes,
control of the Senate does not change from what it
yes,
is now. And in fact, you enhance the power that you
yes,
have in both branches of the government. Because if we fail on that test, because we are exacerbated
yeah,
by what is happening, then we will lose the whole ball game. So what we
right.
have to do is to help our people to understand that this is not over. We're still
It's
in the
not.
first half of this basketball game, and there's a
We really
long
are.
way to go.
Right. We really, really are. I was reading some of the notes from the January 6th committee, and they boiled it down to 187 minutes that the violence raged on the Capitol, which is a little over, it's like 3 hours and 11 minutes and so many seconds. And they were doing hand-to-hand combat, the Capitol Police were, through that whole 3 hours. And before Trump came and said to everybody, we love you. Remember that? We love you.
Mhm.
And it's
Right.
time for you to go home. I know you're disappointed and all that kind of stuff. Like the people were kids in elementary school or something after a play that they performed and didn't do well or something. I don't know. I mean,
And they went home.
and they
And
did go home.
they went
Yeah,
home
but
because he
but
called off the dogs.
right. Even though he was begged to do so
Yeah,
by numerous his colleagues and what have you, begged to do so, but he didn't.
yeah, yeah.
And we
And
have it on record.
yeah, and the reason we have it on record is because you have people who are in Congress who are determined that they're going to bring it out, and they are bringing it out, such that we now know it's not just rumor, conjecture, innuendo. That there is
Right,
hard evidence to support that, and the evidence that they are able to gather with the congressional committee obviously is being turned over to the Department of Justice and
right,
shared
right,
with them, and will provide a basis for further prosecutions to occur. Because no matter what happens in the midterm,
right.
uh, the Joe Biden is still going to be president, And the Merrick Garland is still going to be the Attorney General unless he resigns. So the prosecution will continue no matter who controls Congress. But we need to have control of Congress, not only to ensure that this investigation of what the Trump machine was all about and what they were doing is uncovered, but also that they are able to enact legislation that we need in other areas to ensure that the rights and protections of our people are ensured by this government.
Right. I want to tell those that are listening in and watching that I've dropped the link, and if you'd like to come up, you just click onto the link and let me know, and make sure you have. If I don't know you, make sure you have your camera on so that I can identify and see who it is that's coming up. If not, it's okay if you don't have your camera on. I know that in the past, some of my friends that have been on and they wanted to comment, what have you, they said, "Oh, I'm dressed for bed. I'm getting ready to go to bed or whatever." And they didn't want to appear on camera. So feel free to click onto the link if you'd like to make some comments, or even write in the chat if you have some questions or whatever, Professor Joyner. So, Professor Joyner, it seems like to me that the law takes a long, long time for everybody else except for Black folk. It seemed like I don't know. It just seems, it's just so frustrating that it's like Trump gets to kick the ball down the road more and more. He's so combative, and he's always saying, "Well, I'm going to appeal and take this to another court or whatever," and it's like nothing ever happens, and he's like masterful at that. And it
Yeah.
seems like, in our court system, it seems like you should get a limit on kicking the ball down the road or something.
Well, and you're absolutely right. That's the way it appears, and that is the result of it. But justice is slow. It's not like watching this on New York Grandstand, or one of these hour-long gangster movies going on where it's going to end
Yeah,
in an
I
hour.
think that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Please.
but it takes time, and I'm frustrated as is everyone else about what is going on. But I can understand why it is taking long, because I would rather that it take a few months to get it together and to get it right, so that it does not crumble at the end, than to allow the haste to make waste, and
Uh-huh.
that we rush through and not have every T crossed and every I dotted in the prosecutions that are likely to occur. So,
Mhm.
but I share the frustration. I understand the frustration that you have, and it seems as if, and it does, that when you have the capital, when you have
Mhm.
the money, you can pimp the system as long as you can. But at some point, daylight becomes night, and you're at the end of your rope. And I think that Donald Trump is getting to that point because the courts have regularly allowed the government to continue and allowed Congress to continue to get this documentation. And people are going to begin to fold once they see that there is some prison time in front of them that
Mhm.
that they will have to pay, for the piper, and they'll start falling in line once that
Mhm.
becomes clear. But this is a country where wealth and money can help to prolong the ultimate outcome. But I think that at the end of the day, that justice is going to be done on behalf of the American people.
Well, my big concern now is that now that we didn't pass the voting rights bill that John Lewis. I mean, I can hear him plain as day talking about we have to vote like never before. We have to come out to vote. We have to do it. And now we've got all these voter restriction bills in about, is it 23 states?
Yes, yes,
In 23 states in our union, and the concern is, how do we have people cannot afford to be complacent. You need to take your sandwich, you need to take your whole lunch, your water, a foldable chair. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, people really have to plan their vote, because I mean, it was in Georgia where they made it illegal to give people water. I mean, who
yeah,
does that?
yeah, yeah. And I agree. And in this midterm election, it becomes our responsibility to defeat what it is that they are doing. We have been able over the last 10 years to
Hmm.
expand opportunities for people to vote. If
Hmm.
you go back to 2000, you didn't have early voting. You didn't have 18 days prior
Right.
to election day that you could go out and vote. We have that now. You didn't have this mail-in ballots that you could use to vote. And so we have these mechanisms in place. What we have to do is to make sure that our people don't find any excuse not to vote, and we help them to understand, one, the importance of the vote, but then we teach them how to actually go out and vote. And if they don't have the chair to sit in the line, we need to have some chairs for them that they
Hmm.
can use while they are in line. But it falls on us to make sure that these efforts don't work, and that we
Hmm.
put people in place that are going to protect our right to vote, that will and that will not happen if our people don't exhibit a desire and a present effort to vote, and that's on us. We have to beat the bushes. So we have
Hmm.
Bojack and Sudie Mae and Dottie Ann and Lottie Dottie and everybody. We need to bring them out and make sure that they vote, no matter what it takes for us to get them out, because the mechanisms are there, and we
Hmm.
can't let these barriers that they've thrown up keep us
Hmm.
from what it is that we need to do.
Right, right. I just think that I don't know why historically, um I guess because everybody gets excited about the presidential elections, because you've got so much more advertising and such to create the buzz, and it's so much, the media pays so much attention to it. And for the midterms or special elections, people just are really just not as knowledgeable. Also, there's not as much money being spent on those campaigns usually, and people don't find it exciting. And I know it's not a sexy subject or whatever, but it's something. The thing that I'm trying to encourage is for people to vote up and down the entire ballot. Every elected position matters. It could be somebody for the water board, it could
Yeah.
be somebody for your county commissioners, it's somebody for your school board. Every elected position counts. So, getting circling back to the January 6th situation, Professor Joyner, one thing that I learned in this whole situation was that um, democracy is really fragile. This is America is real fragile. I mean, we almost lost that thing. I mean, really.
We did, we did, and never before. Well, let me just say, first of all, the Civil War was obviously a test of the democracy.
Yes.
When Southern states withdrew from the Union and created a separate country,
Hmm.
and they went to war with the remaining portions of the United States. And then during Reconstruction, we had ongoing efforts to undermine what this new democracy meant, where African Americans could participate. And they did. They did. During Reconstruction, African Americans who were eligible to vote registered at 95% of their voting strength. And they
Say that a
voted.
little bit louder for those in the back, Professor Joyner. At what percentage did African Americans register to vote?
95%. And they
95.
regularly voted at that level in every election because they understood what the inability to vote would mean to them, their lives, and our lives today, because they had suffered through it. They had gone through it and they experienced exactly what would happen if you don't vote. We need to help our people to understand that if you don't vote today, then what happened in 1890 and 1898 will not happen again, because we can lose the freedoms that we have and the protections of the law that exist. They are not etched in stone. And
No,
if the wrong people are in office, and the only reason that the wrong people will be in office is because we acquiesce and allow them to take over. But if we fight with our might, if we vote as if our lives depended on it, and it does, our lives depend on our ability to vote. And if we don't go out and vote, then this democracy that we have fought for and that we benefit from will be taken away. And that's on us. We have to do our part in this battle. It's not like manna coming from heaven that it's just going to drop down and benefit us. We have to fight for our rights, and we have to continue that fight for our rights in this democracy that we have.
Amen. Amen on that. You're not a preacher, but I'm saying amen to that, to all of that, because it's just so clear. I'm so surprised that I'm not getting the people that are in here aren't making any comments. And I know that you can make comments in the chat, and I don't see anybody clicking onto the link to come on the stage. So I guess we'll just keep talking. I'm really surprised, because normally there's people that want to comment and participate, and I clearly try to encourage that a lot, because I know you don't get involved in things that you don't participate in, and I really want to make sure that there's as much engagement as possible. So, okay, there's a Kyle Tucker's person that was on here, and I can't understand what his message was. But anyway, I don't know who that is anyway. But Professor Joyner, do you think that we're at risk for another insurrection?
I do. Going up to January 6th, but let me just, before I do that, in prior years, were you aware that January 6th was the date set aside to certify the tallies from the various states as to who would be the president?
No, because it was just a mundane thing. They just did it. You already knew who was it. And it was a formality.
And the only reason that it became significant and highly publicized was that Trump was calling his people to come to DC for the purpose of disrupting that process. That was very clear. And so we knew about it, and people watched. We had cameras out there watching people as they did what it was that they did. And they've had a whole host of demonstrations leading up to that time. Then you had all of the right-wing forces, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and others who were monitoring actively Black Lives Matter demonstrations. that were going on around the country in response to police misconduct. And
Mhm.
every time there was a demonstration, they would show up Rittenhouse with their guns to work
Yeah.
with the police. And now
Mhm.
you find that the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers uh,
Mhm.
have a part of their membership the police, law enforcement
Mhm.
officers, and military people who are part of that. So the buildup was
Mhm.
there before January 6th. Those people are still smarting and
Mhm.
still feel that with Donald Trump as as their leader, they can
Mhm.
come back and make perfect what they were unable to succeed in doing on this January 6th. So I expect that there will be additional skirmishes that's going to occur within this country, and I wouldn't put it past this week with the president's uh, speech to the nation when he addresses Congress that there will not be some demonstration. So I expect it to occur regularly going forward as these political campaigns heat up, with
Mhm.
many of the people who are Trump supporters leading the battle.
I just I don't know. Like I think about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think about that Bobart lady. She's in Colorado. Marjorie Taylor Greene is in Georgia.
Georgia,
She's
yes,
in some obscure town in Georgia that she uh, ran in or whatever, and it's just I don't know, some of the rhetoric and what have you that they say is just mind numbing. I just, it's almost like I'm wondering where did they go to school? I mean, just the basics of anything that they're talking about. It's just like it's like the dumbing down of America when I hear them speak. It doesn't make any sense.
yeah,
It makes no
and
sense.
they're promoting an agenda. And this agenda has been set, and Donald Trump has arrived as this principal spokesperson now, and he is beginning, and people are paying homage to him. I mean, they bow down at his feet, and in fact, some of them probably washing his feet this very minute
Oh,
to get his endorsement so that they can run, and that is another reason why we need to have our forces out there voting, encouraging people to vote, educating people about the voting process, why
mhm.
they should be voting, how they should be voting, how to protect the vote to make sure not only that you cast it, but that it is counted after it has been cast. So that's our responsibility. And that is an ongoing effort that we
Professor
have to
Joyner.
engage in.
Oh, excuse me. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, that's
Question.
fine.
What happened to remember when DeJoy got that position as Postmaster General, which he's still in?
Yeah.
I know that the president is trying to get him out, but it's some weird situation how the Postmaster General's position is that he just can't be fired from the president. I don't know. But at any rate, do you remember all that equipment they were throwing out? That sorting equipment and all those blue mailboxes that were taken up off the streets and stuff to really prevent the vote and what have you. I hope all of that is being used in prosecuting him and everybody else in trying to um, stop the vote. And also, what happened to all that equipment? I never heard if it ever came back or what, because that's taxpayers. We
Right.
paid for all of that.
And to that, I don't know. I know it happened. I agree with you. You have that great observation about what occurred there. But at some point, there's going to have to be a reckoning about that. Let me just also say that one of the reasons, or the prime reason, that there is this problem with DeJoy is that the Postal Service is an independent agency, that it is not a part of the federal government that the president controls, that it is a separate independent agency. It receives funding from Congress as well as from the people as they pay for postal services. And until you have control of the board of directors of this independent corporation, then you can't hold DeJoy to task for the things that he has done. Until such time as the tenure of some of these board members are up and new people are placed in, then they will be able to deal with DeJoy and the many things that he is engaged in that is of a suspicious nature.
Mm. And to think that he just lives up the road here in North Carolina in Greensboro.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
It's embarrassing. We had him and we had, was it Mark Meadows? I haven't heard anything from him lately. I guess he's supposed to be cooperating with the January 6th committee, I think.
Yeah,
that's
well,
what I heard.
I think that at this point that he's trying to duck and dodge so that he
Mhm.
can stay out of hot water because he was in the middle of it. And he
Yes,
put himself in
he
the
did.
middle of it, and but we still have to wait and see what evidence that they come up with that's going to be able to tie him into some illegal conduct. And if they can do
Mhm.
that, then I think that he would be one who would certainly roll over and provide information that might tie all of these things in together so that we can see the web
Mhm.
that's been created, that's been covered up by the Trump people.
Mhm. Mhm. What was it? What did the GOP? I can't think. I swore I was going to write it down, but I forgot to. What did the GOP call the insurrection? They changed the phrase. They used somebody like me in public relations to create another term for it. Something discourse. The something.
Legitimate political discourse.
Yeah, legitimate political discourse.
Yes, yeah.
I
Which
tell you.
goes which which goes back to this notion of First Amendment freedom of speech is what they're trying to say, and that this is a part of the political process that they want you to adopt, but clearly it's not
Mhm.
because criminal laws have been violated, and there ought to be criminal sanctions for this conduct. We just need to make sure that all of the pieces are tied together so that at
Mhm.
the end of the day, those persons who were responsible for this attack on our democracy
Mhm.
will be held accountable for their conduct.
Mhm. Mhm. um one of somebody I know specifically, she's a professor as well, Dr. Judy Davis. She says excellent conversation with Professor Joyner.
Oh,
Great.
thank you.
Judy, do you have any questions at all for Professor Joyner or any comments? Feel free. But I have the link in there. If you'd like to come up, let me know. If that's you know what, that's a different Judy Davis. Oh, somebody new, because her name is different on here. What? Who knows? I don't know. But at any rate, Professor Joyner, what I don't, I, I have to admit, I'm a little bit confused in North Carolina since we had this gerrymandering situation. So we're supposed to go vote in May. Yeah, we're supposed to vote in May for the primaries, but it's one of the things didn't turn out all good for us in the gerrymandering situation.
Yes, that is an issue that we're working with now, and a lot of court action is going to be required to deal with that. But
Mhm,
again, we still have to get our people out to vote.
mhm,
We still have to mobilize them within the confines of the lines that are drawn and that are legally accepted. Until that
mhm,
time, we have to fight against those lines that have been illegally drafted, as we have been doing here in North Carolina. so that
Mhm.
we provide an opportunity for there to be parity
Mhm.
within the process. But it is something that's a work in progress.
Mhm.
Again, if you don't have the political muscle, if our people aren't voting and getting the right people in place, then someone else will be in place. And when they are there, they are not operating to our benefit. So we
Mhm.
have to be in place or put people in place who will support our right to continue to exist and excel within this society. So no matter
Mhm.
what they do with the redistricting, because there are some races that redistricting means absolutely nothing for, but we still
Mhm.
need to bring our people out and make sure that they have maximum impact on the
Mhm.
process and on the system.
What do you think our strategy should be now? Because I last show I did with a Gen Z and a millennial, the first half of the show. And then the second half of the show, I had an actual candidate that was running for Wake County Sheriff. And I don't think I'd have to even go back to the show. I don't think we talked about among them what the impact of the church was on the ability for people to vote. I know at my church, it's very social justice activated. Very much get the people out to vote. We do the souls to the polls and all of that type of thing. And we're finding that more and more young people aren't churched. So what things do you hear? There at the university, Professor, do you
Yeah.
hear young people talking about this situation?
More and more are talking about it, but we still have to go where they are. If they're
Hmm.
not in the church, then let's find out where they are and go there and set up tent so that we can help to educate them. More important than that, we need to get those aware young people who are out there
Hmm.
to energize them so that they go talk with their peers to get them
Hmm.
out to
Yes.
vote, because peer relationships are very important in this regard. So the fraternities and sororities and the social clubs and the barbershops and the nightclubs, wherever they are, we need to have someone there to touch and concern those individuals and help them to understand the impact
Hmm.
that this process is going to have on them. So it means a lot of work for us, but if you're going
Hmm.
to be free, you got to work.
Yeah, because
Work.
freedom it isn't free. It's
Freedom
a
isn't
lot of
free.
work. I mean, and you think, you know what, Professor? I think about what our people went through just to get where we are now. And I think they must be rolling over in their graves, can't believe that they're trying to take us back to Jim Crow 2.0.
Yeah. And many of them, I'm sure, aren't surprised because of what it was that they had to survive in order to get the advances that we were able to achieve.
Mhm,
This democracy fight is an ongoing one. It's not, you don't, these are not pillars and posts where you
mhm,
drop down cement that's going to be there forever. This is sinking sand. And we need
mhm,
to make sure that the sand doesn't sink us and that we are the anchors that's going to lead other people who are concerned about subjugating and oppressing our people to keep us from doing what it is that this country owes to us because
mhm.
of the contributions that we made to where it is today.
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. And not to mention it, when you take the focus off of just people of color, when you think about women's rights, it's like, I mean, I just saw where I heard where I can't remember what state it was, but they were trying to put into law in that state that a woman couldn't have an abortion if she's past 30 days
Texas.
pregnant. What was that,
Te-
Texas again?
that was Texas. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just ludicrous. And I don't understand the need for people to feel that they need to tell women what to do in the
Uh,
doctor's office. I don't get
especially if they're not women. Uh,
that.
some of the leading proponents are men, and
Right.
so women need to rise up against them and
Yeah.
straighten them out about what it is, because you're not promoting a control of the man's body, but
Mhm.
that's part of this whole white supremacy
Mhm.
notion that the white man is supposed to be in charge of everything and everybody. So if
Yeah.
you are a person of color, if you are a woman, if you are LGBTQ, any so-called uh, part of the underclass,
Mhm.
then you are at risk of this so-called war on men that they are
Mhm.
trying to promote.
Mm. It's absolutely nuts. We're gonna wrap up, Professor Joyner. Any last comments that you can think of about that you'd like to add about January 6th and how it connects to our voting this midterm and beyond? Any
It
last
was
thoughts on that?
it was a wake up call, and it should
Mhm.
wake all of us up.
Mhm.
And it was all about us. It was a part of the design to undermine our position, condition in this society. And if we don't fight for our rights, if we don't fight to make this democracy work for us, then
Mhm.
the democracy will fail us because it
Mhm.
will be hijacked by people who are not operating in our best interests.
All right. Well, that's the last word. I want to thank you so much again for joining me on Remixing Politics and Culture with Pam. And come back anytime. I thank
Well,
you
just
so much, sir.
let me know, and I'll be back.
Okay. And thank
All
you,
right.
everyone, for listening. And I will see you next Sunday for another edition. Good night.